Aloha, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lila Mower, President of Kokua Council. And on the screen, you can see members of the Kokua Council Board. We are one of Hawaii's oldest advocacy organizations. We started advocating at the legislature, at the city council in the 70s. And in the first decade of the 21st century, we were well known for what we call the silver legislation. Legislation which was beneficial to kupuna. So although our focus is kupuna, that is not what we're limited to. Many of us are advocates for other organizations too. Okay, so let's start today's welcome to the candidates for Honolulu City Council District 2. And in the old days, in my old days, that was God's country. So for people who do not know, this is, let me start mentally, starting off with Waikele, a new community, Village Park, Royal Kunia, Wahiawa, Whitmore Village, going up to Haleiwa, Waialua, Sunset Beach, then going further north into the east. Let's see. I missed Pupukea, where I wanted to live, but once I had a child, I realized it's too far away from schools and everything. There's Kahuku, Laie, Hauula, Punaluu. I'm missing some Kahana, Kahaluu. Help me, Kualoa, Wahiawa, and I'm sure I missed a few. But that is God's country. It's beautiful out there. Kaawa, thank you, Barbara, or whoever said that. Thank you very much. Okay, so these two young men, from my vantage point, young men are vying for that city council district. Beautiful area, lots of ag and rural property out there, right? Okay, so some of us are not familiar with that kind of, what would you call it, community. So Matt, if you will start, introduce yourself, talk about whatever your interests are and why you think you should be the representative council member for that district. You'll be followed by Makua. Thank you, Matt. You're first. 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Lila. Mahalo, everybody. Mahalo to the Kokua Council and all the work that you do for our community. Just to share a little bit about me. I've been on the Waipahu Neighborhood Board for 3 terms. And then having spent, the last 6 months or so walking door to door as a part of this council campaign, a big part of what, we're doing is just listening to the community, because ultimately residents know, what's best for their neighborhood, their street, their community. And, we're seeing a lot of issues that I think that the city can really help better, deliver and serve our community on. Cost of living, cost of housing is a big one across the entire district, from Kahaloos all the way up around and then down to Kunia. We see the cost of housing impacting our families. And, I've talked to kupuna that see or have shared, about their, their grandkids, their kids moving away. One man shared about how he was most looking forward to babysitting his grandkids when he retired, but now his son's moving to Vegas and taking the grandkids. Talked to someone, an auntie, that this was the first year she couldn't pay her full property tax. She had to break up the payments just because as, the appraised values of homes as they go up, we see property taxes going up as a result. And so I think that there's a lot that the city can do to really increase the availability of, housing and also allow people to better age in place, by ensuring that our property tax scheme provides sufficient incentives or, support for kupuna, the way we develop, particularly in the urban core, ensuring that we have, this mixed use development that has housing with business space and has access to things like healthcare. And of course, complete streets are a big part of that, right? In terms of multimodal transportation, ensuring that our sidewalks are safe, ensuring that we have good bus routes. Wahiawa, for example, had some bus routes cut during COVID that I think we need to get restored. And I think that's true across the district, right? All of District 2 needs really good, solid public transportation for folks to get around. And then, just stemming from that, infrastructure issues are a huge, issue across the district. from our sidewalks to our roads to our bridges. I mean, from Ko'olapoko up to Kualoa, we see the need for more collaboration between the city and the state, particularly regarding Kamehameha Highway. As we see the deteriorating and eroding roadway, from Haleiwa to Wahiawa, we have a need for, sidewalks, better sidewalks, or, just complete lacking of sidewalks in some areas, right? And then, of course, folks down in Waipahu are dealing with the traffic, as is everybody in the district across North Shore and down the coast, as we see, tourism coming through, tourists and cars coming through, and of course, the infrastructure issues we talked about. And then thirdly, just ensuring that we have a community that's safe, right? Both in terms of crime, right? I think this is one of the few times where, in the past, whenever there's a violent story or violent crime in the news, folks are always like, oh, crime's going up, and HPD's response is always like, oh, actually it's not, this is the data. This is like one of the few times that we're actually seeing violent crime go up in the community. That's what the data shows. And so it's how do we as a community work with our law enforcement, work with our healthcare, mental health, substance abuse providers to really tackle that issue. And also safety from a public disaster perspective, right? To a public or emergency preparedness perspective. I think that's really relevant to the district, ensuring that we have, access to shelter space, like a resilience hub in Kualoa and other places, and really just a better approach to management, given the flooding that we've seen from North Shore to Kahuku and down the coast. I think that's important the city, stay on top of all that. And, I think for me, having graduated high school at Midpac, going to UH Manoa for undergrad and then grad school in public administration and law school, I really want to use my skill sets to first engage the community as we've been doing, understand what folks want to see, and then, work through achieving that at the council. After law school, I was a domestic violence prosecutor for a couple years. During law school, I interned at the prosecutors with the Elder Abuse Division, and you really see the impact of crime on our community. And, especially when we see growing vacancies at HPD, lack of services, and I think that's something that we can really achieve together as a community if we work on it. After that, I worked over at the City Council as a policy advisor with Councilmember Waters, and then moved over to the Department of Community Services during the pandemic. They're the department that I think is as close as the city gets to human services. Generally that's stuff the state does. But
we just passed 5 minutes, just a little reminder.
Yeah. So yeah, just using those skill sets, and we'll talk about it more. I really want to help, uplift and elevate our community. Mahalo.
Thank you. All right, Makua, you're next.
Okie dokie. Aloha no, everybody. Thank you, Matt, for that introduction. And I agree with Matt. The community knows best on what they need. I've been here my whole entire life, 38 years. I've walked these streets, these homes, these communities my whole entire life. My great-grandmother raised my grandmother here. My grandmother raised my mom. My mom raised me here in this district. I raised my children here. This is where I will reside. When I pass on to the afterlife, in Hawaiian culture, my ashes will be spread here at Sunset Beach. It's in my will. And there's nothing more that I want to do than to represent my community. And I understand Matt has great intentions. He's a great guy, but due to the reapportionment of lines, I really think where others seek a chance to strengthen their image or political advancement and maybe a career, I see a place to inspire, to be the change I want to see. And I really think, let's start first and foremost with kupuna. And I sat there with my grandmother the other day before our PBS Insights and really wanted to pick her brain. She was raised here a long time ago, right here in Waialua. They used to walk from there to Kahuku High School when there was they missed the bus. What kind of changes she's seen. And I understand developing the urban core is very important for jobs, creating opportunity. Kupuna want to live in their place, in their district, to live out the rest of their years. They chose this place, and I think we need to as legislators, I really think right now, a lot of the things I see are restricting even the kupuna's ability to live and, live out their years at home. Whether it's being able to rent a room out at their house, whether it's what kind of tax bracket they're in, having, really volatile markets with housing prices, rents. I really think that we need to do more. I came up with a little saying, we can, we will, but we must do better. And I really believe that in my heart, because being here, being in this district, I know the streams. I've hunted this area my whole life. I know where a lot of the backup comes from. I know a lot of the water redirectment in Waiahole, Waikele, all those big water holes in the mountain that go over the other side. A lot of the stuff that's really, proper stream management. It has a lot to do with how the overgrowth was never there because the stream flowed at a certain rate, and now it's overgrown. Nothing can go through. I'm just here on behalf of the people of the city and county of Honolulu. Another big reason is what we do. We are responsible for the spending of everybody's hard-earned tax dollars. And that comes down to, retirements, that comes down to social securities. All of those things are very important. You live on fixed wages. The police, the crime out here. I grew up, I don't know if a lot of you know my story, and they read a lot of things about my father. And I grew up at a young age knowing there was a better life. I watched the police beat my mother in front of me when they took my dad to jail before. I understand domestic abuse. I understand having to overcome, mental challenges as a child. And really these people are there for you. They're there for your safety, but you don't understand it when you're a child and you have to go through those things. A lot of people say you're a product of your environment. I say that's up to the individual to know that there's a better way and to use everything that I've built, my image, this public persona that people have of me of a surfer, really use those relationships to bridge the gap. Because right now it's all about the communication between the general public and the overreach of government. Because when does the government become the problem? And right now, it really seems like we're struggling. We're at a crossroads in Hawaii. We really need someone that actually knows the district, that's lived it every single day. Generational wealth, generational knowledge, generational people from this land. And I say generational wealth because the real estate out here that people want to pass down to their children and the future generations is really in jeopardy with some of this legislation coming forward. I'm Makuakai Rothman. I'm here for each and every one of us. Thank you very much. I had a timer going right here just in case.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to change the speaker view and I'm going to ask my co-host, Rick, you're really good with the timer. So what's going to happen from this point on is that we're going to start with our questions. Again, the questions will allow each candidate to respond initially with up to 2 minutes. And then 1 minute after that to rebut or enhance your own, rebut your opponent's response or enhance your own. Let's see now. Rick, can you be sure to use the mute button after their time limits, okay?
Okay, I'll signal and then I'll mute.
Okay, all right, that's very kind of you, Matt. Rick, thank you very much. All right, the very first question comes from my colleague, Doug Matsuoka. And it's going to be posed to Matt first. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, first, thanks for showing up at this. This is really great. Your guys' district is really big and diverse and encompasses large agricultural tracts, including fields that are leased very cheaply by the state to chemical giants Monsanto, now known as Bayer, Syngenta, which is now the Hartung brothers, DuPont and Syngenta, which are now both known as Corteva, who are manufacturer of the pesticide chlorpyrifos, which was banned by the Hawaii's legislature recently. In fact, the permitted use of that pesticide runs out at the end of this year. My question is, what is the fate of these multinational corporations in your vision of your district's future?
All right, Makua, you're the first one to take this question.
I thought you said Matt, he was speaking, he was on
Oh.
mute, but I'll,
Yeah,
is
I'm
it,
sorry.
were you giving the
It's-
answer, Matt? You were, right? But you're on mute. You want me to go
No,
first?
it's
I can go first, no
Makua, you're the
problem.
second
Okay.
one. Makua, sorry, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So the question was about Monsanto and that. I really stood on the front lines for this issue. You can see back when we've had those marches through Haleiwa, you know, really understanding why glyphosate is still on the shelves at ACE, running into our oceans, and people really, you know, don't understand our agricultural, how our agriculture was set up. It was set up by the people who overthrew Hawaii for profit, and it wasn't set up to help Hawaiians by any means. They brought in, you know, foreign workers, which really became part of our fabric and helped building Hawaii. But the thing is with these companies is they really don't care about life in general, I would say, especially if they're up on the hill and everything washes down. Waialua's had some of the highest birth rate defect rates in the state just from the pineapple days. And I really think we need to go back to the ahupua'a, more sustainable agricultural systems. And really, I don't think these companies have a place in our district. Should I be here, I'm going to do everything that I can to switch over to the organic corns, because I understand how important feed mills and really subsidizing our agriculture by helping grow feed for our agriculture that we want to develop. And I really think we need to go back to looking at how we can use agriculture to rehabilitate the land, because right now those lands are very poisonous. A lot of that black plastic and all of that soil under there is pretty toxic. The groundwater is poisoned from it. We need to do our best to rehabilitate, regenerate, and really get local farmers farming for local people.
Thank you very much, Makua. All right, Matt, your answer, please.
Okay. And mahalo, Doug, for the question, especially right now. You know, I think it's vitally important as we look towards where our economy is going that we support local agriculture and just seeing the impacts of big ag. You know, even in Waikele, for example, just given its history, our soil right now is not the best, and it's hard to grow certain items over there because of that. And I think that as a city, right, it's how does the city, you know, play a part in that bigger framework that we know the state's playing a part in, that the feds are playing a part in. I think first, the council has to be proactive in preventing the rezoning of agricultural lands into commercial or business or whatnot, right? So we can maintain that land for use. And then we have to look, how can the city support local farmers, right? Because we know that's where we want to go. We want to be incentivizing local jobs for local families. And, you know, I know the city just released a good food program. I think it's about a week ago now. I think the city can be investing in small ag, ranching activities that, you know, aren't running afoul of the state regulations or the regulatory framework regarding pesticides, and actually producing what we need. We saw during COVID, right, the impact of when our economy shut down. Sorry, I didn't know if I missed the timer, and it just kind of rippled out, right? And our local farmers didn't have access to, you know, our tourism economy. And so, you know, they weren't selling their goods to the hotels, and they really took a huge hit. So the more we can integrate, you know, locally manufactured products, locally grown food into our economy, right, at a wider scale, so all of us have access to it, so schools have access to it, we can actually create a sustainable agricultural economy to supplement and work alongside all the other industries that we want to invest in.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. Makua, do you want to add anything?
Excuse me, go ahead. Sorry, I was a little bit muffled.
Yes, you have 1 minute if you want to add anything, enhance your response.
Well, I just really know that, you know, Monsanto and those folks, they grow a lot. You know, it's one thing why people, they're around, but there's better ways to do these practices. We don't have to use these toxic chemicals because what comes from upstream goes downstream. And it's a really big, it's detrimental to our environment, the reefs, the coral, the fishes. I dive, I eat from this ocean, the ciguatera that comes from, even golf courses. All those pesticides and chemicals are made. They're not only used there, they're used all over the island for all kinds of different things. They're really doing a lot of harm to our environment. You guys talk about climate change. Some of those pesticides and chemicals, the manufacturing and the use of them just globally is really adding to that right now. So I really think we need to work on more sustainable practices.
Thank you, Makua. All right, Matt, do you want to add anything?
I'll just add two quick things. One of the programs that I'm working on right now at Community Services, where I work as a planner, is a kupuna food program, right? We gave our Elder Affairs Division funds, HUD funds, federal money to provide food access to kupuna in the community. And a part of that is also equipping them and setting them up to sign up for the different programs available. And I think just wanted to highlight one of the examples from the pandemic we did. When we did those massive food distributions, the city was able to partner, right, with local ag to get some of that produce directly to our community. And so I think that's just a great example of how the city should be more proactive, right, in the conversation, even though a lot of it is state issues, a lot of the regulations are state. We can still, as elected officials at the city, give our opinion, go testify, and also just support policies at that level to help, uplift the community.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question comes from Rick Tabor. And Matt, you'll be the first one to respond to this. Rick?
Okay, I gotta pull it up. Got the timer. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. My wife's father actually was elected president of the Po'oa Community Association in the 70s. And his vision was a neighborhood of ADA sidewalks. He was very concerned, I'm very concerned about aging in neighborhoods, the isolation that happens from not being able to get out of the house. Someone ends up in a motorized wheelchair. I had this happen when I was doing in-home services, and they tipped over and got pretty badly injured because there's just no sidewalks. My wife has tripped twice here in Po'oa Valley because the sidewalks don't exist or they're uneven. So you mentioned this, so I'm wondering how you could do that affordable. And knowing your district, you got some serious infrastructure stuff going on there with buildings going into the ocean, kind of thing. So how do you manage that, I think, in your levels and do it affordably? Is it something that the city pays for, or how? So what happened to him is people just couldn't afford to do it, and he ended up losing his position as president, actually, because they just did not want to go there. I have a friend, Ian Ross, that was just proposing this in Makiki. I don't know how it's going. I think across the island. So folks get isolated. They actually end up having mental health issues, depression, an increase in Alzheimer's issues. So what can we do? Who do we start with, Lila?
Matt.
Matt? Okay, you're on, Matt.
Yeah, mahalo, Rick. And we have to do something because it's an issue, like you said, across the district. I've talked to so many kupuna that are concerned about, not even having a sidewalk. We see folks in wheelchairs having to go down the middle of the street. This is true in Wahiawa, Haleiwa, all the way around, the coast coming down towards Kahaluu. And even in Kunia, where there's some neighborhoods that have sidewalks already, we see issues with the tree roots pushing them up, and then they're just not repaired for a long time. And so that makes them inaccessible. Even youth, like I talked to a family their kid fell and chipped his tooth because there's like a 4-inch elevated portion of the sidewalk because the root pushed it up, right? And so something we have to do for our community, because like you said, it impacts the quality of life for our neighbors, creates that isolation. So, to actually encourage people to get out, we have to do these projects. And I think there's opportunities to access a lot of federal funds that the city's overlooked, particularly, with community development block grant funds. That's one federal funding source I work with now at the Department of Community Services. And it kind of jumps around at the city and is used for different projects. But that plus, other types of DOT funds, fish and wildlife funds, particularly for resource management issues. I think that given District 2's unique position as a rural community or community with large rural areas, there's a lot of federal funds we qualify for, could qualify for, that we don't always go after. And I think that applies to the cesspool conversion issue, right? I know there are concerns at DOH not wanting to take funds because they said they don't have the staffing, but at the end of the day, if we have an opportunity to get funds and make them available to the community to benefit the community and lessen the impact or burden on local families, we just got to do it. And I think that we got to do that by brainstorming with the departments, filling out how we can.
Thank you, Matt. I'm sorry, your 2 minutes are up. All right, Makua, your 2 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I really think there's in Hawaii, our kupuna means so much to us. We really need to act now. We need to engage with the community. We need to isolate these projects. Where are they needed? In a rural community like ours, I really think we have the best argument to appropriate funds and have them encumbered to actually, redo our infrastructure, especially sidewalks and whatnot. Wahiawa, some of the oldest communities there are. I've been walking door to door in Wahiawa. One of the main issues in Wahiawa is the sidewalks. Haleiwa is a little bit tricky because of the historic preservation of the town and the look, but throughout Waialua, throughout other parts of the community, there are really specific places that we could really target and go after those funds. Because like Matt said, there's a lot of federal funding available, especially right now. They just released a lot of funding. We need to go out there and get it done. But it really comes down to our departments and the deficiencies we have there. You can talk about DPP, you can talk about the planning department and all these places. We need someone that's going to actually know the community, work with the community, get the funds, not just apply for the funds or get the funds encumbered, get them to the project and get the project executed and delivered to the people. Because I think that's the part that's lacking major in the city, is we can all apply for funds, we can get for funds, people are in the planning department, they're doing this, they're doing that. Where's the delivery to the people? Where are these things that our people can use right now? Because I hear a lot of talk in the city. I've been watching a lot of things and people like to talk around issues instead of saying, we have to get this done and actually going and get it done. I really think working with the communities and making sure that talk is cheap and we deliver to our community that is in much, much need right now.
Thank you, Makua. All right, Matt, would you like to respond? You have 1 minute. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Sorry, not so much respond, but just, talk about this issue because it's so important. I feel like we could talk about it for hours, but I do think that, we've talked about in the past at prior forums and debates about how the city could, bring on more full-time positions dedicated to identifying, applying for, and then monitoring these federal funds that are available. I think that that's something the council can appropriate, right? Ensure those positions are in the budget. And then we have those positions available to then go out and pursue these federal funds and help bring them in, right? And regarding Wahiawa specifically, I know Senator Dela Cruz, when he was at the council, was very proactive in ensuring that there was an eligible community-based development organization in the community. So that community specifically is positioned to take some of these HUD funds that are available for infrastructure improvements. And then like Makua said, we have to ensure that they're appropriated for the entire district, right?
Thank you. All right, Makua, do you want to respond or add anything? You have
Yeah,
1 minute.
I really think the infrastructure comes down to really designating areas for senior housing, for kupuna housing, places for our kupuna to go and creating infrastructure around those communities as well. There's an elderly home over here in Haleiwa, and I see a big steep drop right next to it. Some of the elderly people in kupuna in wheelchairs, they have the sidewalks, they're just not really accessible. The areas that they are not real wheelchair friendly or walkable friendly. So we really need to, I think when we do our infrastructure and we do really designate these areas, we need to designate areas for our kupuna that are safe, that are not just right on the highway where people are flying around corners, and really cater. And when we do get the funds, not only talk about the sidewalks, but actually these community, the people, and how we can get, direct funding for kupuna housing linked to this.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question we're going to start with you, Makua, but it comes from my colleague Dale Head. Dale, if you could ask your first question, please.
Oh, thank you very much for being with us today. It's really great to have two folks interested who are both motivated for social justice. Anyhow, first question. Yeah, I watched a recent news item the other night on affordable housing on Maui. And the mention was made that 17% of home sales are to companies that either flip the property for quick cash profit or drastically increase rents. Meanwhile, over in Kauai, about 25% of homes are usually left vacant by absentee owners. These are just two identified factors reducing available affordable housing inventory. Question, would you support a vacant house condo tax on these owner investors layered upon the current property taxes? Your thoughts, thank you.
Oh, thank you for the question. Well, living in a district where there is a lot of vacant homes, a lot of those vacant homes usually owned by very wealthy people, because if you're struggling and there's an everyday cost, you know, the high cost of living is an issue to you, you don't have a vacant home. That's usually not the case. And yes, I do support, you know, some type of rate increase, whether it's a tax or how we do that. We need to really work together as a council when we do that. But I think that, you know, affordable housing, the reason it gets to where it's at and gets flipped for profit is because there's no legislation to keep affordable housing affordable. And that was one of my main things. We need to get ahead of this, because a lot of these affordable housing projects that come up, they get denied, they don't go through. But we need, us as city council people, you know, city councilmen, we can put legislation forth that will keep affordable housing. If we're targeting 60% AMI, that house needs to stay at 60% AMI. That needs to stay. It'll slowly rise with you know, how the property taxes rise and the rise of real estate, but it has to stay within that AMI. We really got to be better and more diligent at putting legislation first when it comes to affordable housing. I really think that'll help curb the you know, funneling of money through rents, through Section 8s, to, you know, big corporations, and really having people build truly affordable housing, because there's no way for them to flip it or sell it or get a loophole, because our legislation keeps that affordable housing guaranteed.
Thank you.
All right. Matt, you have 2 minutes, please.
Mahalo. And great question. I think that we're at a you know, in crisis right now in terms of our housing inventory, and folks are moving away at record rates. I think we see it impacting the city, right? Cost of living and cost of housing is resulting in, you know, 300 HPD vacancies, people at DPP, you know, at the state even, you know, because the folks coming in and buying, you know, luxury aren't going to be our teachers and our firefighters and our police officers and our city employees. And so it's how do we make, you know, how do we make a community that our families can actually afford? And I do think that looking at a vacant home tax, when you have 70,000 about vacant units in the state, like you mentioned, a lot of these are investment properties. Folks don't live there. How do we push those into the market, right? Push those back, rather, I should say, to the community so they're accessible to live in. And I think there can be, right, appropriate exceptions, you know, maybe kupuna that have a home, but they're temporarily in a care home, you know, so they're back and forth maybe to their home. Like, I think there's reasonable accommodations we can make to meet the needs of our community, but still try to push, you know, some of these vacant units back into our housing market, on top of enforcing our vacation rental laws, which I think comes along with, you know, fixing all the issues at DPP, and so much more. I mean, we could talk about affordable housing for hours, and, you know, happy to do that. That's why I do the work I do over at Community Services, but generally on the vacant home tax question specifically, I would support that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Well, I would,
yours.
yes, I would definitely support, just like Matt said, a vacant, you know, home tax. Like I said, we really need to be diligent when we do pass legislation, because a lot of the times you pass a blanket legislation it really promotes black market stuff. And that being said, a lot of these houses, unless you live in this district directly, pretty much your whole life, you know that a lot of these vacant homes are multi-million dollar homes. You're gonna push a lot of these multi-million dollar homes back into the market, especially in this district. If you really look at the percentage of vacant homes in this district, a lot of them are, I guarantee you, above $2 million. And for someone to say that that's going to be affordable for someone to buy right now is a little bit, I would say, naive, because you would have to really do more homework in the district to know where the vacant homes are and how much they actually cost. And so I think we need to be more diligent in paying attention before we pass legislation. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Makua. Matt, would you like to respond or add?
Yeah, I mean, just adding, like we see what our families are experiencing with this 20,000 unit shortfall, right? So, you know, there's just not enough units to meet demand. And that's why when you walk some of our neighborhoods in the community, you see, you know, there's no parking because everybody's moved back home, you know, so you have 5, 6 cars at home because people just can't afford that housing unit if they're staying here. A lot of them are moving away. And so to meet that 20,000 unit shortfall, of course, you know, we push some of those 70,000 vacant units back into the market. We enforce our vacation rental laws to push those units back into the market. We fix the permitting process, which is doable. And we can talk about it more if there's questions, to speed up development in the urban core, you know, where it's not a community opposition issue. It's just purely, it's taking them so long to get their permits through. We can really solve this housing crisis. And that's a part of why I'm running, because I do believe that it's solvable if we come together to work on it. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see, Matt, you're going to be next with the question, and it would be Barbara Service. Barbara, your question, please.
Hi, I really appreciate you guys coming today and talking to us, and thank you for participating in this Kokua Council event. My question is about the rail. Ever since, it's my recollection that ever since the rail started umpteen years ago, it has been thought that there would be low ridership. What are your ideas specifically, if that turns out to be so, how to increase or encourage folks to ride the rail? And that seems to apply more to your district than any others. I hope I kind of got that right. So I'm sorry, Lila, who's first?
It would be Matt.
Matt, please.
Yeah, mahalo, Barbara. Yeah, I think that one, ensuring that it's affordable, right? We need to ensure that as we integrate the bus system with the rail system as it comes online, it has to be something that, you know, is cost effective when folks are deciding to ride it, particularly kupuna, you know, giving them a lower rate like they have on the bus pass right now. I think ensuring that we have good access points. Like I said, a lot of District 2 had shifts in the bus routes, right, during COVID. And we need to ensure that the community, the entire community, has meaningful access to public transportation. Because you're going to have to take the bus if you don't live exactly along that rail corridor as it's coming up, right? And then, you know, we want to ensure that on top of that, if we're talking about what multimodal transportation looks like, right, we want to allow for development of mixed-use communities along that rail line. So as folks come in and are identifying places to live, and they have access to, you know, the small businesses, and have access to, you know, their doctors on the ground floor, and then, you know, the grocery store on the ground floor, that it becomes practical for folks looking for new housing opportunities to live along that rail line, right? And rely on it, because then they can plan their lives, plan their day, and have a meaningful mode of transportation.
Thank you. Makua?
Okay. Thank you once again for that question. That's an amazing question for our district. I really think that supporting the opening of the first part of the rail is what we have to do before we get any riders on. We can't talk about riders if the rail is not working. So we really need to stop the bleeding and where it's going and how far it's going, and going billions and billions of dollars more in debt and not even being able to support the opening of the rail. So we need to get it running, because nobody's going to ride it if it ain't running. Secondly, identifying the places where we can put the mixed use development. And that also goes to supporting more jobs, creating more of an economy, stimulating our economy by developing along that rail corridor. A lot of those workers live along the rail corridor. So should we get it working, they could go on to work and back. You know, that alleviates some traffic as well. So really stimulating the economy around the rail, I think, is really the biggest economic driver of the rail. Coming from way out here in the country, it's not really an option to pull up to Mililani right now and ride the bus to the rail, wherever that parking ride may be, especially after they took our parking right away. So right now, I really think we have to support the opening of that first part of the rail, the development around it, and the ecosystem that it can create, because it's going to create a lot of jobs, a lot of money, and a lot of income for the city and state, just getting it open. And then we start working through how the ridership is. But I really think the development, the economic system of that actual part opening is huge, more than even the ridership, because that's how we'll get the riders on, is opening it.
Thank you. Matt,
Yeah, just
comment?
yeah, I mean, just to add that I think as we move forward, right, we need to ensure that there's transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility at heart. And so I do think that the current ED is working on making that happen, right? But like Makua mentioned, the parking ride, I agree that I do think that there needs to be, you know, a pursuit of bringing that to fruition, because there's so many folks in Waipahu and Mililani and Wahiawa that were looking to that as a part of their, you know, transportation process, right? Being able to drive down and park and ride. And so I think as we look for funding opportunities for that, I think we need to, you know, try to fund that.
So that park and ride was taken away?
Yeah, so well, I'll say halted. I think a part of the process was the funding side, and then also the issues with the actual land that they took, which raises a whole lot of questions, right? Like, because that parcel was condemned, but then the actual soil isn't exactly ideal for putting this big concrete parking structure on it, which are questions that I think we need to dive into, because, yeah, folks I remember the banana patch and all the folks over there that actually got kicked out to condemn that property, right? So that's part of the conversation the council needs to have in terms of figuring out, okay, how do we navigate, you know, all these issues?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'd like to give Makua equal time to respond, Makua.
Oh, thank you. My response will be quite short. That's why you really have to know this district if you're going to develop here, if you're going to do anything here, because knowing where that banana patch was in the river, the soil that's there, a lot of these people come from outside of Hawaii. They look at a general plan of things, topographic maps. They don't actually get down into the nitty gritty of things a lot of the time. And there's a real disconnect there. And those people, just to reiterate, weren't just kicked out. They're actually paid for their properties. And a lot of them were stoked because they weren't making that much money off of the little banana farm. So they kind of, a few of them, I know one of the farmers, he actually was stoked because he got money. But that being said, the whole thing about transparency and accountability, how people perceive the payment of rail. The general public doesn't know 67% is get tax. You know, the city has $212 million, 7% in the budget. You know, the TAT, what it's supposed to be used for and what it's going for right now. I really think that communication is key here on how we move forward. But those issues are in the past. Right now, we need to think about opening it so that it can be used. We can generate an economy around the rail because everything else is done. We need to think about now and the future.
Thank you very much, Makua. All right, our next question. We're going to start with Makua, and the question comes from Greg MIsakian.
Hi, aloha to both of you, and thank you for joining us today. My question is regarding homelessness, and so I'm going to ask both of you, if elected, what would you do to address the homelessness issue in your district? Are you an advocate for mandatory outreach and programs for the homeless? and especially for our homeless kupuna who need the most outreach and assistance of any of our residents on the island.
Thank you. Am I on mute or am I unmuted? Am I good to go?
You're
There we
good.
go. Okay. Well, homelessness is so close to my heart. I grew up homeless. I used to live in a tent right outside this windows here, and now my house is here. I lived as a homeless child. I understand what it's like to be stereotyped, to put into these categories. And I've been working every day out here. I've been going to these homeless encampments and actually talking to them. So that's a big one right now. And a lot of the people that I talk to really say the kupuna need the help right now, because a lot of them are not on drugs. A lot of them lost their homes. They're just local people that fell on unfortunate times, and they really get overlooked because to house the homeless, it's a very, very complicated issue. The mental health, just getting someone that wants to go to a homeless shelter and be there and play by the rules is huge right now, especially when you have drug addiction and all these things coming in. What we can really do and make an impact right away is help these kupuna, because they are willing to follow the rules. They are willing to get help. We just need to get them the help. And I really think our district needs some type of homeless transition shelter, especially for kupuna. We have nothing out here right now. You got to go to Waianae right now to get it. And a lot of kupuna don't want to go to Waianae. Why is it not important for our people in our district? We have a lot of homeless people, a lot of homeless kupuna, to actually build those facilities. And that's why I think everything we do as councilmen comes down to the financial responsibility we have to the people, spending their money and making sure they have something to show for it. And I really think being in these homeless camps, because not too many people can just walk in there. They're not just going to let you. Have the respect of these people. I've been there, done that. I've been through these situations. The people understand that I'm not there to hurt them or to trick them. And if I come in there with an idea, we are going to execute it. And I really think working together with the council, the rest of the council, to implement an idea like that island-wide is going to be really beneficial with the knowledge that I have being directly integrated into these communities and talking directly with these people.
Thank you, Makua. Matt, it's your turn.
Mahalo, and I think that that is a super pressing question, right? And, you know, I think that as a community, you know, as a city, we generally have an idea of how to, you know, solve homelessness. And it's an issue of just not doing enough to get us there. I mean, I think you have two components, right? You have the affordable housing side and then the support services side, right? Because you have those few thousand families, kupuna, you know, young people across the island that, but for not being able to afford that rent, you know, they're sleeping in their car, sleeping at the park. So if you have units those folks can actually afford, you know, it's fairly easy to get those people into housing if they have the option. In terms of those support services, right, we have very diverse community of people experiencing homelessness, youth, people coming out of the criminal justice system, folks with mental health issues, folks with substance abuse issues. And so I think pouring resources into that, right? Like the provider that's responsible for North Shore down to Eva right now has 4 outreach workers for that entire span, right? So they're working overtime to connect with as many people as they can, right? But like, you know, we were talking about it, it takes oftentimes many touches, many interactions to build that trust, to get someone ready to take services or accept services. And then you need services in the community that they can access, because folks from a community that are homeless generally are going to want to stay in that community and will return there, right, to live there. And so it's having all levels of support. Mahalo.
Thank you. All right, Makua, do you want to add something?
I just want to say that putting homeless and affordable housing in the same sentence is a little bit off subject, because you're not just going to get a homeless person to afford a house, regardless if it's $10,000. They really don't have anything. We need to create more opportunity for our people in our district as well, because a lot of them can't afford to travel. A lot of them don't have the capabilities to get to town and work those jobs way in the city and then come back and feed these families in the bushes. You know, we need to create more opportunity here, more kupuna housing here. Whatever we do in our district needs to be for our district. And we can talk about the urban core and all these things, and that's great for the Oahu plan and all these things. We need opportunity. And all of our numbers have gone up. So whatever the state and city is doing right now, they're not doing a good job, because I really don't think I'm an outreach person. You know, councilman or not, I'm out there in these communities. If there's only 4, then there's 5 now because I'm there. And I'm not afraid to get my feet dirty. And I've been there. I understand these issues. For someone in an office and a nonprofit organization to tell these people how it's going to be, I really think we need to be in there to make a difference. Thank you. I'm sorry. I thought you said I had a minute left. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, so Matt, you have 1 minute to add, or?
Yeah, so the partner community services, for example, we've been working with the area provider Achieve Zero. They do the street outreach. They also do the youth services up across from Haleiwa Elementary School. So we're working with them to, do their cesspool conversion. So this whole spectrum, right, is Honu would come in. That's, the low level, low barrier homeless services. They've been in Waipahu. The community loved it. Gets folks off the sidewalk into immediate services, right? And then they get placed. And like Makua said, we need stabilization services. So DCS right now is looking at some open properties in the community that, we can partner with DOH to provide the services those folks need. And then you get those folks into housing, like the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement Project. I just worked on in Wahiawa, providing 60% AMI units. And then the Waialua Milk Camp project that the neighborhood board was supporting, that's going to provide some, 300 affordable units, including renovating the project, the homes that kupuna are already living in up there, right? And keeping those affordable for them. So I think it's approaching the whole system, right? We have to ensure that at each step of the way, we're meeting the needs of individual families. Mahalo.
Thank you.
You just got to remember those 300 units are on ag land, so you got to be careful there.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Gary Simon. And
hey, thank you, Lila. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Makua. We've been speaking of this issue of cost of living and affordability. The lifespan of a city council member is extremely short, right? It's 8 years, so you have to hit the ground running. These property taxes. Some people in Honolulu like to brag that we have the lowest property taxes, but that's on the simplistic side because we might be the only state in the nation where property taxes don't fund public school education. And also it's misleading because we have these rocketing valuations, these assessment valuations. So part of this hitting the ground running is having a starting point in the conversation on how do we modify these tax rates, and to come in with a suggestion that might get shut down, but at least have a starting point. Well, first, do you agree that these homeowner property tax rates that they need to be modified, and then do you have a suggestion on what do you reduce? Do you reduce the 0.545% to what? Do you increase the exemption to what? Please, Matt, Makua. I don't know who's first, Lila.
Oh, Matt would be first.
Perfect. Yeah, I think both. I think increase the exemption for the owner occupied, and then also provide an exemption for kupuna, particularly maybe or specifically at a certain age, maybe income based as well. So we're ensuring that folks on fixed incomes are able to age in place, right? I think that's a part of restructuring the tax. I don't have an exact rate because generally the council member, whoever wins would have access to BFS and all that. And so I guess my request would be to get what the change in revenue would be. And then of course you're adjusting, right? So that's why conversations about like a vacant home tax are so useful, because it can help recoup that revenue that's lost to help ensure that we're still providing those services. So I think that that's a part of the conversation. I think that overall, just stopping this crisis is going to help, because taxes are going up so dramatically because the appraised values of homes and properties is going up so dramatically. And so by actually meeting our housing demand and ensuring, not just, for me, when I talk about affordable housing, it's not just some, it's not some specific number. It's ensuring that everyone, no matter their job, right, has access to a housing unit that's not more than 1/3 of what their monthly income is. That is to me what everybody should have access to. And it's going to vary and look different per person, per community. But I think that plus, providing some tax relief per kupuna would put us in a great place as a community.
Thank you, Matt. All right, Makua, your response, please.
Well, if I had it on perfect world, and you said even if we could introduce something that would be shut down, Proposition 13, you pay how much you paid for your house, like California, but then you're gonna have to figure out where the revenue was. But I mean, that'd be huge. If you paid property taxes on what you bought your house for, people would definitely be able to live in Hawaii. I actually wrote out a little structure here, and I think being a homeowner, you actually know the rates because you have to pay them. And right now, the $140,000 bracket for residents is that's not very much. I really think breaking down at least 3 different categories for kupuna, residents under 60 years old, starting at maybe even $180,000, 61 to 70, and then 70 and older, a $200,000 exemption. At least it's something there, especially because our property taxes right now are going to rise regardless. There's no method to keep them down. They're going up. So if we subsidize kupuna, we're going to make that back up because somebody just bought a house down here for $14 million right next to mine. I can't afford that at all. I got lucky when I was 18. I was smart with my money and I bought a home here. But now, I'm dealing with this directly. I have to apply for my homeowner's exemption, my homesteading taxes. So definitely affected by this. I really think that implementing some solutions, property taxes should not rise indefinitely with the rising cost of homes in Hawaii. And I think we should have public hearings to disclose how much revenue is increased and all of that things. Like Matt said, only if we win, we get that information. Why doesn't the general public know how much the property taxes is or what we can do? I mean, we could have some discussions. There's very brilliant people out there that can come up with, awesome solutions. And I think that really the communication between the homeowners, the people who are having to pay these land taxes, and the legislators, so that we can work together to find solutions and not being afraid, like you said, to put something forth, even though it gets shut down.
Thank you, Makua. Matt, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there was a second part, Gary, because it sounded like you maybe wanted to include some other stuff to the question, but just generally, I think that investing in kupuna specific projects too has to be a part of our housing conversation because, part of what the city does, right, is we have typical development of housing, right? So increasing the number of units we have through speeding up permitting and all of that will help bring down costs just by increasing supply. But then you also have all those projects that the city funds with federal funds, with our affordable housing fund that comes out of our real property tax, and then that's allocated specifically for affordable projects like the community development block grant funds I talked about earlier. The city can be supporting kupuna housing through that, right, to provide affordable units that are accessible to the community, and maybe even have support services for those that are in need, right? So I think we need to make sure that the city's meeting both needs, right? Like providing the support for folks to age in place.
We've gone over a minute.
Yeah, mahalo.
Thank you, Matt. Makua, you have a minute.
Like I said, I think the general public really understanding the land assessed value, the building assessed value, the combination of the two divided and multiplied, how we get to the number that we pay, what the services are that you can get, what you can qualify for. I mean, I don't know how many, I think it was, there's 373,000 homes or some odd, and only 150 something thousand applied for property tax adjustments or subsidies. And I really think educating the public about what they have, what they can do, and then going forward into, proposing legislation, working together and seeing how, because I don't think, this is just me personally, sitting back and just kind of going with the flow is really going to benefit us. I really think what this gentleman's question that he asked is not being afraid to propose new solutions, even though it might you know, make a few people a little disgruntled. We have to think people first, and someone's got to be brave enough to do it.
Thank you, Makua. Makua, you're going to be next answering my question. Actually, I have like 6 or 7 questions, but I'm limiting myself to one for now, okay? The public's faith in government has been tested time and time again, especially in light of recent corruption. Members of our state legislature through the county's various offices, like Department of Planning and Permitting, the Police Department, Prosecutor's Office. What do you suggest to alleviate corruption?
I suggest we start at in our city government, because busting another guy on the street, sending him to jail and him walking out while the officer's filling out the paper, it's not going to do much about crime. You know, you have to understand crime and what drives crime. It's just like mental health, the underlying causes, creating opportunity for these people so that they don't turn to drugs and alcohol, they don't feel depressed and turn to a life of crime. But us as the leaders and the people who are supposed to be upholding the code, if our own entities don't uphold that code of conduct and that level of respect, how do we get respect? Respect is earned. And if our city is not respectful between departments, people are leaving. DPP gone right now. Why? I don't know, maybe because most of the criminals of the biggest cases right now are coming out of our city government. We need to clean that up. We need to follow the money. We need to make sure the money is being spent correctly. We need to create opportunity for our people. The more opportunity, the more money people make on the streets, the less chance they have at going to crime as the only thing that they can do to solve their issues. But I think being the representatives and the leaders, we have to be the ones that uphold the highest standards in our office. That hasn't been done, and we need to start at the foundation and the root of the problem first. Us as a city government, 3,000 positions vacant, we will never operate efficiently. We have to make sure our money is being spent wisely. No government, no entity, no corporation will function correctly without the correct staffing to run our government and uphold that level of leadership that demands respect.
Thank you, Makua. All right, Matt, your response, please.
Mahalo for the question. I mean, big picture, if I could, wave a wand, I would say campaign finance reform would be the biggest way to transform our political system, right? Getting private money out of politics would dramatically decrease the influence that exists. Given we're operating in that system now, I do think there's a lot the city can do, the council can support. I think we need better ethics training, more integrated, right? Because right now, there's consistent ethics training, but it's pretty easy to click through a PowerPoint on a screen. I think if we had more interactive training, that would definitely help. I think that we should also look at recruiting, good folks to come into government service. We see so many folks leaving government service because they're getting paid more in the private sector. And it's not because they don't value service, it's because that they want to take care of their family, like in Hawaii, with our increasing cost of living, like they have to be able to afford to live here. So I think by, supporting a stronger, more resilient city workforce, we can help reduce corruption. I think that a big part of it is also just maintaining that connection to the community, right? Which is why virtual participation in council hearings has been so pivotal, right? Because it gives people the ability to jump on from home, kind of like we're doing now. I think that should be preserved. And we need a council member that's going to be consistent. And, I would say all council members should be consistent and engaging with their communities, their districts. That's what I would want to, do for District 2, right? Is be present, maintain that conversation, those open lines of communication, so that what you're deciding at the council is really informed by what the community wants to see.
Thank you, Matt. Makua, do you have anything to add?
I just think, like he says, the connection with the community. We are this community, born and raised here for generations, accountable people that are standing up for our communities. And we are here not fighting against corruption, but fighting for accountability, fighting for and with our people. Because just because a line was drawn and there was an opportunity, I mean, that's one reason. But to actually live, breathe this community, it's all about a personal accountability. I mean, you get money out of campaign finance. I mean, me and Matt both raised a lot of money, but it comes down to the accountability and what are you willing to say and where do you put your foot down? Because you supported me, you maxed me out $4,000. Cool. That should be because you support me and what I stand for in our community, not because what I can do for you personally or how I can make you money. Because it doesn't matter really if you take it out, someone's going to try and do it to you on the side. And if you're not accountable to your people first, before anybody, it doesn't matter where the money's coming from. There's people out there, there's people. They're accountable for great good and great bad. And I think that we need more accountable people from the district to represent us.
Thank you, Makua. Matt, do you have anything to add?
Just that we are lucky to have such a diverse, large district with so many great communities and so much knowledge, right? And like I said at the beginning, every family is going to know what's best for their street, for their neighborhood, for their community. And I think that's a part of, how politics should be operating, right? And I think that if we can, latch onto that, utilize that, because the district is so large, right? With 5 or 6 state reps, 3 or 4 senators, 2 congressional reps that cover the district. I think there's a lot that we can accomplish if we get out of these silos that we're in, leverage that community support, and really work to accomplish all that our district deserves.
Thank you. All right. Our next question.
Do I get to add something to that or no?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
get a 1 minute ad?
Go ahead. Yes, you do. I'm sorry, Makua.
Oh, no worries. I was just wondering because I just want to validate Matt's point. 38 years in this community. These communities raised me. The person I am today is because of the people, my relationships, and the connections that I have with this land, this Aina. And there's nothing more that I want to pay that back in full and represent them with all of my heart, all of my knowledge, all of the connections, because it's a lot about what you know, but it's who you know, how you can integrate yourself in these communities, how you understand the way of thinking in District 2 because you grew up here your whole life. I don't think that is an irreplaceable trait that I have. And thank you guys very much for just having me. I'm just excited to be here and express myself and what I want to do for our place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Makua. My apologies for that oversight.
No problem. I didn't mean to interrupt either. I just want to get that.
Thank you. Thank you. I get confused with what I'm doing. All right. Our next question comes from my colleague, Doug Matsuoka. Doug, your question will go to Matt first, I think. No, yeah, Matt first.
Okay. Once again, thanks for being here. I get to ask another question, which is pretty cool. Now, Kokua Council, one of our issues is aging in place. My personal issue is a place to age. I'm 70 years old. I'm working full time. If I retired, all I'd have is Social Security, and that would get me the nicest tent in Thomas Square, I swear. I say Thomas Square because I'm a townie, but Ka'ava, that's nice. But you know what? You got to know somebody, right? You just can't move out in a tent there. Anyway, this has been touched on, but this is specific to renters. In Hawaii, a landlord can double the senior's rent. You got 45 days to comply or get out, or you can evict a long-term renter without any reason. Now, aside from building more affordable housing, and I get the logic of building affordable housing, you get some money, build houses, you get some jobs to the hammer and saw brothers, and sisters now too. So I understand that. But aside from that, are you willing to consider any of the following measures to protect renters? And that would be limiting the percent rent can be raised. For instance, Oregon, state law, you can increase the rent 7% plus the inflation rate. So a law limiting some kind of limit on the percentage rent can be increased. 2, requiring longer notice for large increases in rent. In Hawaii, you got 45 days to respond and they can triple your rent. You got 45 days. And also number 3, requiring cause for eviction. A lot of places you can't evict long-term renters unless you show cause. So any of those up for consideration for you?
All right, I believe Matt would be the first to respond to Doug's question.
Small Doug, I would be more than happy to look at all those pieces of legislation and consider them. I think that anything that is a community we can rally around to solve the housing crisis that we're in, I think is something we have to consider because we see it affecting everybody dramatically, right? Particularly our kupuna, like you said not just age in place, but a place to age, right? Was what I think you said. I mean, even talking to, folks that run care homes, for example, I know that they're under constraints based on how much they get from the state. And we're looking at a situation where we might not have enough places to support our kupuna. And so I think it's vitally important that we be investing in many programs, structures, organizations, housing opportunities that we can to ensure that we're doing just that. I think that's also what I took away from the COVID-19 pandemic was that as a collective, we're willing to be mindful of the entirety of our community, particularly our kupuna. And just given that, I know that together we can really make these decisions and projects and policy decisions that support folks being able to both age in place and have a place to age.
Thank you very much, Matt. All right, Makua.
Thank you for the question, because you got my mind thinking right there. And knowing these districts, a lot of the times the people that do raise these rents and kick people out and do all these things are foreign investors that come in and buy these homes after kupuna were living there for a very long time, because local families are so quick to kick kupunas out or raise their rents, exponentially. I really think, now that I think about it, as a council member, we could implement some type of policy where you can have an adjusted land tax rate so that you don't have to raise that rent on a long-term renter or a kupuna, and put some kind of policy in place where there's a give and take so that we can keep the kupunas there and we can actually give a little bit of a subsidy on the, because we've been talking about that, to offset that cost, because I know the high cost of living, a lot of inflation is due to Fed and a lot of these other things that we can't control right away, but we really can control what we do in our communities. I think a lot of people would be willing to work together with kupuna and work together with the city if you understand that we could subsidize our property taxes somehow, especially if you have long-term renters and especially kupunas, especially over a certain working age. Like you, sir, I'm 7-year-old. I commend that. I hope I work hard as well and have the energy when I'm your age. That is amazing. But should you not want to, and you want to just relax in Kaawa, I really think some kind of policy that offsets so we don't actually have to do that, and really look at ways of bringing our local community back to our communities, because they're much more willing to work with our kupuna than someone that just says, no, you're out of here 45 days. I want to rent and buy it for an investment property. We really got to keep our communities intact to really understand how we can address these issues and not be afraid, like I said, to put policy forth that can adjust that rate so that we can do it.
Thank you, Makua. Matt,
Thank
do
you.
you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, just to continue the conversation, right? I think that it's important that, as we make, all these decisions as the council, right? And whoever ends up there makes the decisions about, what types of laws to pass, how to appropriate money. I think we can all see how interconnected all of these issues are, right? Being able to age in place or have a place to age requires access to housing that you can afford. It requires access to, medical care. And that relies on like infrastructure, public transportation. When the Kahana Bridge closed down, folks called concerned about being able to access dialysis, right? And that across the district, being a rural district, we see issues with access to medical services, access to first responders, right? Public safety issues that I think keep all of us safe. And so I think that it's important that, as whoever ends up at the city council understands how to navigate, right, those conversations, who to talk to, how to get
We've gone over a minute.
Mahalo.
You know, I just want to point out as additional information that my full-time job is with Hawaii Meals on Wheels, and I mentioned that because we see older people, seniors, kupuna, as not only consumers of social services, but like me, providers of social services. A lot of older people are also our volunteers. In fact, Rick is one of our volunteers. So just wanted to point that out. And the fact that I myself was homeless not too long ago, 2014. I wasn't substance abusing. I wasn't mentally ill. It doesn't take much to be down on the street. You know, I just wanted to point that out. And thanks for answering the question.
All right. I think we have 1 minute for Makua to add.
Sir, I understand that all too well. My grandmother almost just moved to my house because she was about to lose her place. My grandfather passed away. The Meals on Wheels, thank you guys very much. My papa ate those before he passed from cancer. I would go downstairs, and because it was a senior delivering it, I'd walk down and I would make sure that they didn't have to come all the way up to deliver it. And it's really close to my heart, these issues. And that's why I said a lot of these homeless people and these issues, if you understand and go into these communities, not everybody's on drugs. Not everybody has mental illness. There's a lot of people that we can help right away. But you have to be able to integrate yourself into these communities to do so. And I understand that, you know, having a desk job and being a lawyer and all that stuff is cool, but we have a lot of those in the city right now. We need people from these communities that understand these communities. When we say we need to better communicate with the communities, how can you better communicate with a community person that the community has raised, lived there their whole entire life, know every stream, river, fish, cow, I mean, dog at one point on their street. Like, it's my pleasure to be here. And I thank you all very much for considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Makua. All right. So the next question will go to Makua, and Greg MIsakian, it's your second question.
Okay, well, thank you for that. First, I just want to say that both of you are really giving incredible responses and well thought out answers to very important issues that we all face. I'm not quite as old as some of the Kokua council members, and I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but I'm getting closer to the 60 point. So I'm getting to be, you know, understanding more and more of what our kupuna face on the island. And I would be happy to have both of you on our city council. I'm in the Waikele district. But my question, which is short, is basically, if you could choose 3 of your top issues for kupuna, what are the 3 top issues that you would tackle in priority for our kupuna in your district to help them the most that you think you can?
Oh, well, definitely housing the homeless and implementing some type of policy, whether it gets shut down or not, that actually directly impacts the kupuna, because the aging in place, like we were talking about, being able to subsidize that rent somehow and help them with that. And we need to create some kind of tax bracket for them. Our kupuna, and like you said, you might not be that old, but you will be. They, in my eyes, they deserve to relax. They've given their service to our community. They're giving their service to our island. It's time for them to relax. It's time for us as the next generation to step up and help them. You know, in Hawaii, we protect our kupuna. And as I get closer to kupuna age, but as of now, as a leader of this community, I think it is my responsibility to stand up and do whatever it takes. House my kupuna, keep my kupuna here, and number 1, keep my kupuna safe, whether it's on the sidewalk, in the store, because all of these hijacking and all of these things that we see right now happening, mom and pop shops for 40 years have to close their doors. That is unacceptable. Knowing the issues, the underlying causes of those things, having a little bit of an upper hand, growing up in this district, probably knowing what circles and where things are coming from, being able to have a positive impact in those circles to make sure people understand we need to take care of our kupuna. It's not just me, it's all of District 2. We are here for the kupuna. The kupuna were here for us. Now it is our turn, especially as a city councilman, to do whatever it takes to keep them safe, housed, fed, and at home for their golden years.
Thank you very much, Makua. All right, Matt, your response, please.
Mahalo, Greg. Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, housing and affordability, I think, are the #1 issue. And I do think that the city can, address that in terms of what kind of tax relief we can provide for kupuna specifically. How do we meet the housing demand that we have? I mean, I think all the stuff we've talked about are part of that, right? The permitting issues, the vacation rentals, the vacation tax, providing projects with support services, providing those exemptions. I think all that together, right, is probably the biggest crisis because we need our kupuna to be able to live in Hawaii. We have a lot of folks that are still working. We have folks that I've talked to and met going door to door that have retired and are on a fixed income. And so those are the ones that, really need to be able to, we need to ensure that they're able to age in place and live where they're at too, right? I think the infrastructure issues we talked about are also doable. It'll look different in every community, but the safe sidewalks we've talked about comes up time and time again going door to door because people experience it, right? Especially when we see traffic fatalities. And then of course the crime, public safety, I should say, both reducing crime and, emergency preparedness. I think both will keep folks safe in their individual respective communities.
Thank you very much, Matt. All right, Makua, do you want to add something?
I mean, I just want to get to work. All these great questions and, talking about what we can do is one thing, but talking about what we will do and doing it. Because for years and years, we see on TV for the last, I'm not sure how long, about what they're going to do about housing. There's more housing vacancies than ever. What they're going to do about homeless. There's more homeless than ever. What they're going to do about the cost of living. The cost of living is higher than ever. And I really think having someone that's accountable, that's strong enough to not speak truth to power, but actually to stand firm for the community and deliver. Because it's all about allocating, encumbering, delivering. But first, we need to get into those communities and understand where the exact needs are and what we can actually do. Because talking about things and all these things is cool, but what can we do and getting them done?
Thank you very much, Makua. Matt, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, just that, now really is the time that we have to confront all these issues, right? Like coming out of COVID, I think we saw that our community is extremely resilient. And at the same time, these issues that we're facing from our housing crisis to, our climate crisis, whatever form that takes on, particularly with the natural disasters that are going to happen more frequently in the district, the erosion of our roadways, the aging for the water supply infrastructure. We really need the city to be more proactive. I do think that there's a lot of folks that work very hard every day, right? Like I go in every day because I love my job and love being able to try to put people into housing they can afford and help get them out of homelessness. But it's clear that we're not doing enough as a city, right? And I think that if we can really just come together as a community and as a council, even, I think that there's so much that we can accomplish to uplift the entire community.
Thank you very much. All right, well, it's 12:55 and our program ends at 1 o'clock. So I'd like to give you both an opportunity to provide a closing statement. If you could limit your closing statements to 2 minutes each, is that possible? Okay, so we'll start with you, Matt.
Of course. Mahalo for having us, Lila, everyone. Mahalo for all the questions and anyone that is tuning in or will tune in. This is ultimately what this whole process is about, right? Getting to engage with the community, better understand what they want to see, because that's ultimately what should be guiding us, as, folks that are in government, as folks that are wanting to run for government, whoever is elected to city council, will be there to represent the interests of the entire community, pass legislation, ensure that there's money appropriated in the budget, but mainly ensuring that the community has a voice and an ability to participate in that process. And so I think that's what I look forward to most, is helping ensure that as a district, I think that's often overlooked, you know, from Waipahu all the way around to Kahaluu, right? Kind of the horseshoe district that goes around Honolulu, Oahu. I think that it's important that we are, you know, bringing these issues to the attention of everybody that's on the council now, and working with the other 8 council members to ensure that we're actually, you know, serving the interests of District 2 and our residents, and uplifting, you know, all of our families. But again, mahalo for your time today. Happy to talk story with anyone, anytime. So reach out.
Thank you very much, Matt. All right, Makua, your closing statement, please.
Mahalo nui loa kākou. Thank you to each and every one of you. I'm excited, and thank you for allowing me to be here, because as we say, we're going to connect with our communities and be those voices. The team that I create, and the team that's around me, you know, I may be a strong voice and know these communities very well. My inner team that I create, the whole community as it comes together, because your folks' voice is my voice, and my voice is our voice when we come together as one community. And like I said earlier, we can achieve, we will, but we must do better. And I really think that, oh man, it's so close to my heart, because like I said, generations of my family have come from here, and to not be able to wipe my children's butt at a city bathroom over here at the beach without a sanitary toilet seat for my daughter to sit on. I mean, why do we have so much but have so little? Why is it someone's only option to leave home just to survive or be homeless? You know, those voices need to be heard. We need a leader that is not afraid to speak, but not just to speak. More than speaking ever is being able to listen, because all great leaders understand how important listening is and how valuable togetherness is. Should we all be able to accomplish that together, nothing will stop us. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be that light, to be that shining light, to make our communities come together. And I just want to say thank you guys all very, very, very much from the bottom of my heart. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this quote unquote debate that we had. It was enlightening. It was wonderful to meet Matt and Makua. I have to echo my colleague Greg MIsakian's sentiment that I too wish that both of you could serve on our council. I don't know what it is, maybe because you live out in the country, but really what you had to say was a breath of fresh air. Hey, Greg, you and me, we got to move out of our neighborhoods.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you guys what, and I told Matt this, and you know, I'm a competitor for sure, and I'm trying to win this thing with all my heart. And should I win, I would love to have Matt on my team. I told him that the other day at PBS. I think he's a smart guy. He's cool. And like I said, I need to create an awesome team. And, you know, maybe you guys will get that wish, and vice versa, whatever it may be. But I'm here just to serve, period. And I thank Matt as well for giving me such a competitive run, you know, pushing me to be accountable to myself, to learn, because I am just a boy from this community. And I want to thank you guys very much for pushing me to learn as well with the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Makua, for your heartfelt message. Matt, would you like to add something?
No, just mahalo to everybody, and Makua for running such a great campaign. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. It's 1 o'clock. We need to end our forum. Please take care of yourselves. Malama pono. Mahalo for your participation. It was wonderful just to hear you both. Thank you.
We hope. Thank you.